Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you all know, earlier today, the Phillies announced the managerial change and the appointment of Rob Thomson as interim manager for the remainder of the season. In a few moments, you're going to have the opportunity to hear not only from Rob, but also from Phillies President of Baseball Operations, Dave Dombrowski. We're going to open up to questions in a few moments, but if you do have a question, just would like to ask everyone to raise your hand, wait for a microphone to be passed to you. They are on either side of the room. And with that, we can start with our first question, which will come from in the back, Marcus.
Dave, why did you fire Joe at this time, and what do you expect to get out of Rob that Dave wasn't, or that Joe wasn't able to give you?
Well, I'm around the club on a day in, day out basis, so you're always having a pulse of what's happening with the team. And so for me at this point, and I don't put it all on Joe, as we said in the release, we've been a club that has struggled. I'm disappointed. I mean, I put the club together. I think we're better than what we played. But to me, I think the most important part of, if we're going to turn this around, and I think we still have the capabilities to do it, I think we need a different voice in the clubhouse. I think a different voice in the clubhouse with the players, with the staff members, and I think that Topper provides that. I think he'll provide a different type of communication aspect with the players, with everybody taking place. And so I think that was really important for us to get it going.
Okay, Scott, right here in the front.
Dave, was there a tipping point for you, just that made it feel like now was the time?
No, I don't think really a per se tipping point. We haven't played well for a while. It's something that, in your own mind, you're thinking of what makes you better for an extended period. So again, being around the club day in and day out, it was one where I think that when I just looked at how we had played over the road trip at the end against the Mets there. We played against San Francisco the first couple of games, all tough losses, right? But then when I looked, of course, at the schedule, and you're looking at, okay, if you're going to make a move, what time frame makes sense? And I looked towards the Thursday off day if we're going to do it. And really, it is something I've been thinking about, because I haven't really thought that the club has played as well as what we're capable of playing, and just a different chemistry. But I got some rest on Wednesday night, which has been hard to do with some of the length of the games that we played, and some of the travel that we had, and it's something I had been contemplating. And I woke up and went for a jog, and I came back and really thinking, you know what, this is the right thing to do at this time. I think it's the best for our organization.
What led you to think that maybe the message wasn't getting through, or that a new voice was, as you said, was needed?
Well, just watching the club day in, day out, I just think that, I hear often, but I do hold this in somewhat mixed comments as far as when the club looks lackadaisical, right? I've heard that comment. Well, a lot of times when you don't score runs, you look lackadaisical, and we weren't scoring runs for a while, so you don't have that. Most of your energy happens when it's on the base paths. That's just how the game is. So you can have a really good club and be in a position where you're not scoring runs, and people will say, gee, they look like they're dead. Well, it's not necessarily that they're dead. They're just not scoring runs, and that's where you go first to third, score from second, and the base hits, slide in there. But I just thought overall that we just needed a little bit different voice and a little different energy.
Okay, Howard, right in the front.
Dave, how much responsibility do you take for this team? And with that, how much responsibility should the players take in the way they're playing, whether it's scoring runs or making mistakes on the field? First, your responsibility.
Well, I take responsibility when the club is playing this way. I think we all take responsibility. I don't think anybody, I think the players take responsibility too. I know they're not happy with what's taking place. I do think we're a better club than this. I think we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. When you're in a streak like we are right now, it has a tendency, the weaknesses have a tendency to be emphasized. I see a lot of things about the defensive aspect. We're not a strong defensive club, right? But we're also can be a fundamentally good defensive club. There's a difference if you miss a ground ball or a fly ball that you should catch versus not fundamentally doing something that you need to do. I think overall, until we went on that road trip with the Mets and the Braves, I thought we were playing defense about as well as we possibly could with the personnel that we had. We had a real bad road trip at that time period. And I think they're separating the two. I think that, I heard somebody say today, oh, they don't have very good starting pitching. I differ with that a great deal. In fact, going to come out. I mean, we just had the pitcher of the month in the National League. We've got some other good pitchers. You know, our bullpen has scuffled at times. It's been a year in baseball, if you look, that a lot of bullpens have scuffled. And I just, again, saw another article that somebody wrote that said, okay, what are different trade possibilities? And they listed all these different relievers in baseball, and they said, geez, a lot of these guys were Phillies because they were contemplating. They said, gee, they have a lot more talent than what it's showing at this point. So I like some of our guys out there. It's a tough spot to close a ball game. And whoever you're closing, it's a tough spot if you give up a run. So I just think overall we're in a spot where we can be better than what we've performed.
Is it the manager's fault when a pitcher doesn't cover first or there's bad fundamentals? Is that the manager's fault?
I'm not directly saying it's the manager's fault, but I think it's also a tempo that you need to set on your club that you just play better.
Okay, Jim, over here on the right.
Dave, what were the deliberations like the last few days? Who was involved in making this decision? Did you consult with players and ownership, and where did your conversations go?
I did not consult with one player. I did not consult with one coaching staff member. There was a decision myself. I talked to some of our my front office personnel, people like Sam and Jorge, and then a little bit even with other assistants, Ned and Ani, Preston Mattingly, so people that would be my close baseball people. I did talk to John Middleton after where my thought process was and what I was thinking about, and John said that's basically it's your decision. Whatever you feel that we need to do, I support you. So he was aware of it, but I really talked to John. My days kind of come together. Today's Thursday, so Wednesday, probably Tuesday was the first time I talked to him about that.
Okay.
What was the conversation meeting like with Joe today?
Well, in my situation, you know, I called him first thing this morning very early. I mean, I was here by about 7:30. I called him around 10 to 8, 5 to 8. Normally, Joe answers like at that time all the time. He didn't answer right away, and then I sent him a text. He was out running some errands. He had his kids, and I asked him if he could come over here, and so he came over, and we talked face to face, and it was pretty quick. And he said basically, hey, I get it. The club has underperformed. I've been through this before. Understand how it goes. I wanted to make it clear. I like Joe Girardi tremendously. I think he's a tremendous person. I think he's a good baseball person. I told him how much I enjoyed working with him. He told me that he'd be pulling for me, he'd be pulling for the Phillies, he'd be pulling for John Middleton. But you know, when you hear that news at first, you're not exactly in bright spirits. But I do know that he ended up packing up his office. Other people came in to see him. Sam went down there. John Middleton spent quite a bit of time with him. John was here. And a couple other people in the front office. Topper eventually had a chance to talk to him. And I think by the end, he was in a much more relieved state, I would say, would be the way the pressure was off his back at that time. And I think with others, he loosened up a great deal.
Okay, Alex on the left.
Hey, Dave. You've mentioned a few times that there was a need for a new voice. What was it about Joe's voice in the clubhouse that wasn't working, and what is it about Rob's voice that you think could be effective?
Well, I'm not going to really sit up and say much more about the situation with Joe. I think Joe he's one he's given an effort. He busts his tail a day in, day out basis. I just think a different voice is needed. I think that Topper is a different voice and viewed in a different way with the players. I think he will just have a different relationship with them and with the coaching staff than what Joe did. And so I think that difference is what I'm looking for at this point. And I think it will work. I have great confidence in Rob that he'll be able to do that.
And did Joe's bullpen management factor into this decision at all, and do you guys anticipate any changes in that respect?
Well, when you say bullpen, no, I don't think I mean, one thing about bullpens, and I've learned this a long time ago, when you win, everything is fine. When you lose, people second guess you. It's just one of those things. Some guys out there need to pitch better. But changes, we don't have any change of personnel. We're looking at Jose Alvarado coming back at some time, but of course he's been here. Sanchez pitched out of bullpen the other day. Right now we're sitting with him in our bullpen. But I think the bullpen management and how they're used, and that will be up to Toppers, and he'll be the one that'd have to tell you if he's going to use them differently.
Okay, Todd on the left. please.
Rob, you've been with Joe a long time. You've been his right-hand man. He said as much this morning on the radio. So I think the first one thought is, how much different are you than Joe? You know, I think maybe some early reaction as well. They got rid of Joe and they hired his right-hand man for a long time. So how different are you than Joe? Are you different than Joe?
Well, I think everybody's a little bit different, and they manage the game a little bit differently, and the manager's got the final say. The bench coach, hitting coach, pitching coach, they try to provide information, but eventually the manager's got the final say. And I'm a little bit different than Joe. I'm not going to go into the differences, but I like to think that I'm prepared and I'm a good communicator with these guys. These guys are good. The plan is to make sure that all these guys know where they're supposed to be at any given time, whether it's our bullpen, the lineup, whatever it is. I just want to make sure that the guys are prepared.
Put you on the spot. Do you have Corey Knebel pitch last Tuesday in Atlanta? I mean, do you believe in pitching a guy 3 days in a row, depending on the situation?
Yeah. So we're now into June, and I'm not going to say we do it every time because we take it case by case. We used Familia the other night, 3 days in a row. So we're going to do it case by case. If they got low pitch counts the first 2 nights, and the guy looks you in the eye and he says, "Hey, I'm good to go," and you trust him, then it's a possibility.
Last one for me is do you have any ideas on how to make this defense better? Because it seems like the personnel is the personnel. So, the idea that, somebody can get this defense to finally start playing better.
Yeah, I don't think you can get guys to create more space or cover more space, but we're constantly working. We've got a great coaching staff, I'm telling you. And I was very humbled when Dave offered this to me because we've got a bunch of guys in that coach's room that could be sitting up here right now. So I feel very fortunate for that. But so our coaching staff constantly is working on how to, fielding ground balls, throwing, catching balls on the run. We can't teach them to cover more space because we can't teach them speed. But we got to put them in the right place and teach them or help them make sure they can field ground balls, field fly balls, throw to the right base, do all those fundamental things.
Okay, Dan on the far left.
Dave, you said you're hoping for the turnaround, obviously. But do you feel, as constructed, this team, even if it's the last wild card, can still make a playoff push, or do you feel like it's going to take more than a new voice and you're going to have to be a little more active even before a trade?
No, I think we can make the playoffs. I think we're in a position where we can battle back to do that. I do believe that. We're going to have to play better. I do think that, too, the one thing that you constantly need to look at the club, we need to be a good hitting club. That's how we're put together. That is really a key for us. And so I think we can continue to swing the bats even better. We're top 10 team in the league. I think that we can be better than that. And that's how we were constructed, and we were all on the same page as far as constructing. Ultimately, it comes to my decision in that. But I think we can. Now, every club can get better, and we will continue to strive to be better and get better personnel all the time. But I do think we can still make a playoff spot, yes.
Okay, Marcus in the back.
First for Dave, you said 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't ever get into evaluating managers during the season. And I guess what were things that bad over the last 2 weeks that you changed your philosophy?
No, I said I don't ever get into evaluating them publicly. Totally different statement.
Okay.
So that's what I said.
At that point, were you considering this move?
I have thought of this move periodically over a time period, so I can't speak specifically about 10 days ago. But it's something that I've looked as I've thought about it various times.
And excuse me, Rob, Joe's a real good friend of yours. You've worked with him very closely in high leverage, high pressure situations for years now, and he could not have been more glowing or appreciative or endorsed you more. How do you feel right now? Are you conflicted? And when you were for the Yankees job, you were like, this is my dream. I get to be a major league manager. Sitting in that chair right now, like, what's going through your mind?
Well, it's a little bittersweet, because Joe and I have been together for, as you said, for a long time, and we've had the highest of highs. You know, we've world championship together, a lot of playoff wins together, and we've battled through some tough times. So there's a bond there that will never be broken. Having said that, when Dave offered me this job, I think that the decision of Joe's firing was already done, and then Dave offered me the job. I think I would be foolish to turn down a major league manager's job. That's my opinion. And again, as I said before, I felt so fortunate because I know of all the great baseball minds that are in that coach's room, and they could have picked a number of them. So, yeah, it's a little bittersweet day, but you know, we got to get to the point where we move forward and we move on.
Have you spoken to Joe?
I did. I spoke to him this morning. We hugged, and it was a little bit emotional, but and he said the same thing. He said, "You got to move on. Do a great job. You're going to do a great job." I'm fine, and that was it.
Okay, Tim, right in the middle.
Dave, was there any thought to going outside the organization? I know Jim Leland was speculated upon by some people.
Well, first of all, I probably didn't understand the process for naming a manager in the middle of a season. So unless you go through a full interview process, you have to name an interim manager. Because you are, Major League Baseball has rules that you need to go through a complete process of diversity. And so first of all, it was an interim basis. Secondly, Jim Leland, I have the utmost respect, one of my best friends. We talk all the time. I do know that Jim is not interested in getting back on the field. I know that.
Okay.
When I say that, back on the field and a manager, that type, not that he won't help out and like he does in spring training with the Tigers, but he just does not want to do that.
Okay, one second. Mike on the left.
Rob, you know, you've been in baseball a long time. How long have you waited for an opportunity like this? And now that it's here, just what are your feelings like? And Dave talked about Joe being a little bit relieved afterwards. I mean, do you now feel like that weight is on, you know, your shoulders now?
Well, well, I have to tell you this. When I was a young coach, I always thought about managing. And I got to a point where I got to the big leagues, and I'm a big league coach, big league bench coach, big league third base coach. And I never really thought of it much at that point because I remember my father always saying, look, take care of what you're doing today, because if you don't, tomorrow's going to be, it's not going to be good. And don't worry about your next job, just do your job. And so I've always taken that approach, and I finally got to the point in my career where I thought, well, you know, why even think about it? Let's just be the best bench coach or third base coach or whatever I'm doing. Let's be the best at that time. So this was a surprise. It is, but I'm really excited because I agree with Dave. This is a good club. We haven't played consistently yet. We played good for short periods of time, but we need to play good for a long period of time, and I think we have the pieces to do that. I've been studying championship clubs for a long time, and I truly believe that there are pieces here to be a very good club.
Okay, we're going to do just a couple more. Jimmy on the right here.
So, Dave, the last few years, this team organization has signed, you know, big names: Harper, Wheeler, retained Real Muto, 2 big hitters this spring. I would even put you on that list, another big name free agent. You've been here a year and a half. Have you been able to ascertain why this team cannot break out of this cycle of losing? And is it systemic? And maybe as an example of that, they drafted 3 outfielders, #1 since 2015. None of them have come here and seized anything, to the point where you have to spend all that money on the corners for guys who profile as more offensive than defensive. Now the defense is hurting you because Harper's out. Is there just a systemic problem here?
Well, it's probably a long answer for here. I mean, it's really is, there's a lot there. It's not something that can't be fixed and changed. I think we already started some of those changes this winter time when we made some changes within our system, our organization, a lot of changes, but those things don't show up overnight. The results of changes in player development take a while till they come into play. but I think we have even fundamentally changed some of the mindset as far as how we're going about some things in player development, which changes. We've attempted to do that at the big league level. I still think it can be accomplished by bringing people in like Schwarber and Castellanos, even with the coaching staff with Kevin Long and Bobby Dickerson. If you look at the results today, it hasn't worked. But I do not think that that part is just something that's written in stone. We can change that, and that's what our goal is. And hey, I've been in organizations where we're worse spots than this, and we ended up coming back and having pretty good clubs. The same thing was asked of me in Detroit many, many years ago, and we are a lot worse than what we are here. And you can turn it around with the right people and the right players, and that's what we'll do, and I think we'll tackle it.
Okay, we'll take one final question. Actually, two more. Rob, back left.
Dave, you mentioned some of the fundamental issues, specifically on the road trip. There was a moment when Odubel came up to play a ball that just got past him that felt like a fundamental mistake, and yet he was in the lineup again after. Are you setting a higher expectation with Rob in terms of when fundamental errors occur, that they will be handled differently?
No, I mean, I think that's I understand the play you're talking about. I can't even tell you that that was a fundamental error. That was just a physical error that he missed at that particular time. That's different than what I'd consider a fundamental error. So he was in a position where the manager makes the lineup up and their thought process on how they think players, that playing time should be given to players. Everybody has their own thought processes, and it'll be up to Rob to make that determination. But that is not a kicker as far as the decision that was made that Odubel plays the next day after making that type of play, no.
Okay, final question here. Alicia in the front right.
Yeah, Rob, congratulations. Did you have a chance yet to talk to the team as a group or any individuals? What was your message to them, and what's the short-term win that you're looking to see, most immediately?
No, I've talked to a couple of individuals, but I'm going to address the club here as soon as we're done here. And I think the biggest message is that I'm going to be there for them, and I'm going to have their back. I'm going to support them in every way. I'm going to communicate with them. I want to know what these guys feel physically, mentally, emotionally, so that we can properly prepare them so they can compete at the highest level and perform. And the only way you get that feel is by communicating, talking, and listening, and spending time in the clubhouse. So as a bench coach, you're spending a whole lot of time preparing for the other club, and probably not so much time in the clubhouse. Now I take the prepare hat off. I'm still going to prepare some, but I'm going to have my confidence in the coaches around me to keep me informed of information. Now I can go out in the clubhouse and really communicate with the players, get to know them, get their feel, know what they like, know what they don't like, know when they're hurt, when they're not hurt, and so that they know that I've got their back and that I support them, and they can go out there, put their game on autopilot, and just relax and play.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Dave. And that'll conclude in today's press conference. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.